To record audio using Adobe Audition, we can record as individual audio files. We can also record as multitrack, and we will look at that a little bit later. So to record an individual file, we can simply click on the record button, and we can also find other options as we look through to be able to record, but that's the easiest way. Now with this, I want to give it a name. So I've named it voice recording. Now we have sample rate and our bit depth that we can work with. Now these reference the overall quality of our project. The sample rate is how many times per second that we are taking a reading of the audio coming into the microphone. And if we want to do CD quality audio, it's 44,100 hertz. Bit depth is the relative detail of that audio, how we're able to plot that waveform of the audio when we take those samples each fraction of a second. So if we set it at 16-bit audio, 44,100 hertz, 16-bit audio, that is considered CD quality, and that is more than sufficient for most purposes. If you are recording music superstar, you may want to boost your sample rate to the highest your equipment can handle, as well as increase the bit depth to the highest level your equipment can handle. But for our purposes, 44,100 hertz, 16-bit is going to be more than sufficient. Now I can hit record, and we see how it is recording. The waveform is showing up. Hey there, it's time to record a podcast. I hope you enjoy the show. I hope you enjoy the show. I hope you enjoy the show. If I hit the space bar on my keyboard, it will stop the recording, and we will see how now I have the waveform represented in the timeline here. I have audio because of my microphone. It's recorded in both the left and right channels. If you have a mono microphone, then it will typically only show up in the left channel, and you will have to create faux stereo. And there are techniques to do that. Under amplitude and compression channel mixer, there's a preset of fill right with left, so it will take the information from the left channel and copy it into the right channel audio. So if you put on headphones, this is what you hear in the left ear. Down at the bottom, that is what you'll hear in the right ear. So we can see that right now I have decent levels of audio. It's peaking somewhere around -9 dB, so that's decent. We typically want to get our audio somewhere between -6 and -12 dB as our base setting when we are recording. Now, as I do this and want to hear it, I can scrub through this timeline, or I can hit play or spacebar on the keyboard. We'll play the audio, and we see how it is recorded. So I'm able to capture the audio and put it into a file. Now this file hasn't been saved yet. That's why we have the little star next to it. So now the next thing I want to do is to save that file. So then I need to choose that file and decide where I am going to save it. It is very strongly recommended that you make a project folder when you are working in Audition to contain all of your assets. So it will have everything that you are working on, all the different files that you are putting together. So I am going to create a folder for this project. So I will decide where I want to put that folder. And right now I'm just going to put it on my desktop. So everything is going to go into that folder. And finally I will click OK. So now I have saved my first recorded audio file. To do some basic edits on this audio file itself, we'll look at what we can do. So if I hope you enjoyed. All right, let me find record a podcast. It's time to record a podcast. So I know this beginning audio I don't want, so I can simply highlight it and hit the delete key and it goes away. Now here, I hope you enjoy the show. I hope you enjoy the show. I hope you enjoy the show. I hope you enjoy. All right, so I have those other two. I said it 3 times, so I'm going to just highlight and delete. I can decide how much space I want to occur there. We have the little keyboard that picked up noise there. So it's time to record a podcast. I hope you enjoy. All right, so with that, there's this little, I'm going to zoom in on the sound here, this little, oh, too far, little tick of the sound that I don't like right there. So if I highlight that, now here, this widget allows me to make a sound louder, or I can reduce that sound so it goes away. Because there's that little tick, Again, I have another one right here. This must be related to how I am saying things, so I can just reduce those down. We see how it disappears in the waveform. Now, looking back at it, I hope you. So now if I wanted to say make you louder, I could highlight that and I could boost that up. I hope you. So I can further emphasize. I want to tweak some of the timing. I can get rid of some of the gapping in here between these parts where I was slightly pausing as I said it. Podcast. I hope you enjoy the show. There we go. So now I have it edited into the form I want. I can save it and we're in good shape. So in my project, I've added a couple extra files to my project folder. I have a music file, I have a sound effect file, a music file. There's my voice recording file, and we'll see there's a .pkf file. Now this is a settings preference file that gets created for every file that is open and modified inside of Adobe Audition. This file is not something you need to worry about. If you turn that in as a submission for a project, I won't be able to listen to anything because it's a preference file. It's not a data file. So we need to make sure we're paying attention to the file type that is there. So to open the other files in Audition so I can work with them, I can drag the files into the window here, or I can double click in the window and it brings me to open file. Otherwise, under file, I can also choose open, and that would bring me to the same window as well. So I'm going to choose my music and my sound effect. I can hold down Command or Control and click on multiple files to choose the ones I want and select open. And we can see how it's thinking, and then the files will be opening here momentarily inside of Audition. So with the files open, I can double click and see there's my music file. It has a very different waveform than our recorded voice. Here is the sound effect file. So it's got 4 kind of crunching, breaking sounds as we work with that. So if I want to put all of these different assets together into a project, the way that I can do that is using a multitrack file. So we need to create a new multitrack file. So if I look under File and choose New, I will see one of the things is called multitrack session. So a multitrack session allows us to have multiple layers of audio. So when I select that, we have the same settings that we saw previously for sample rate, for bit depth. Now, one thing to keep in mind is if the settings of your multitrack are different than the settings of your downloaded file. So I can see right here that the downloaded file is the sound effect is at 4824, my music is 4416, my voice is 4416. So what's going to happen while I work on this, when I create my new multi-track session, is if I choose 4416 for it, and by default Audition always wants to put it into the Adobe Audition and then the version number folder for it. So we have to choose where we're going to put it. I'll give it a name, I'll click Browse, and once more I want to go to the desktop and choose that folder where I'm working. And now I will select OK. So it now brings me to this dialog here. Or not dialog, this interface where I have my different layers for my audio. We also see on the side over here we have a .scsx file. That is our session file. So the session file for Adobe Audition is the layout and organization of the audio. It does not include any actual sounds itself. So if you move around the session file and don't include your audio assets, then you now have a worthless project. So it's important, and this is why I made a big emphasis, make a project folder, put all of your assets into that. That's going to keep you safe while you are working. Going back to the desktop here, I will see now I have PKF files for all of my assets. And here is a folder. I said I put it in this folder, and it then created a folder same name as the session file and put the session file into it. So we can see this is the advantage of making a project folder. If you have some assets on your hard drive, on a flash drive, and your downloads folder on your desktop, if they're all over the place and then you try and move things around, it's going to be messy and you will probably lose some of your assets. So I'm going to put my voice into the project. I'm going to put the music into the project, and finally I'm going to put in the sound effects. And now it gives me a dialog and says the sample rate does not match the sample rate of the session. Press OK to make a copy of the file that will be conformed, meaning it will make a duplicate version at the same settings, 4416, of our session project. Hit OK, and now we can see there's two versions of that sound effect file in my file browser here, one at 44, one at 48. Going back to the desktop, we will see there's now an additional folder added called conformed files, and that is where it now put the copy of the conformed file, the 4416, instead of the 4824 file that we were looking at. Now we work in the multi-track a little bit different, and there's some additional bonuses that we can work with here. Now I can't just simply highlight a section of the sound and get rid of it. So I can't select into that audio. So noticing that there are 4 sounds here, if I wanted to go in and edit this original audio that I'm working with here, all I have to do is double click, just not on, if we look here, there's a faint yellow line and a faint blue line. We can see it easier on the green track, the yellow and the blue. We'll talk about those in a little bit. They're for controlling panning and volume of this individual track. But what I do want to do with this is if I wanted to edit this, I double click on the waveform and it brings me into the file. We can see now we're back in that file. And if I were to get rid of the first sound here, so remembering that there were 4, I'll highlight and hit delete. And it says the file is referenced in one or more. This may change the duration, blah, blah, blah. I'll say, okay, yeah, I know. I'm living dangerous, living on the edge. Now I can go and go back to my session, or I can go into any of the open files that I have there. So if I go back to my session by selecting it off of the little hamburger drop down, or I can double click on the session here, or I can just click up top, because notice we're in waveform. If I go to multi-track, now if I go here and go back to waveform, you'll see how it brings me to the waveform there. So we can use our navigation. Now look here and we'll see how it is different because there's now only 3. So that was a destructive edit. And I'm just going to get rid of the warning. I don't really care about that one right there. But if we wanted to just grab, say, the middle sound, I can adjust the in and out point for this audio and move it around in my track. Now if I want a second copy of this, I can Alt or Option drag, and I can have multiple copies of that. So if I wanted that sound effect, I'm going to mute the music because it's overpowering. I'll mute the voice, and if we play, we can see how that sound is now happening multiple times in this track. So it really is kind of visual editing. So the M for mute. Now if all my tracks are on, so they are colored, not gray, if I hit solo on a track, notice the other tracks went gray, the same visual effect that happened when I muted them. So if I'm soloing this, I can now just listen to this track with the music. So that now gives me a good starting point. Now if I want this music, if I want to fade it in, there's this square with the diagonal line in it, and we'll see where it says, hey look, I can fade it in. I can just click, and that yellow line indicates how it's going to fade in. So we can fade it in linear, or we can kind of ease it up or in. So we have a lot of ways that we can go about fading it in. Now on the top I see this is seconds over here. So maybe I want to fade it in over the course of 2 seconds. So now I can listen. So we can see how that fades it in a little bit and gives me a nice intro. Now if I turn off solo and wanted to hear my voice, it's going to be a little bit difficult. Time to record a podcast. And we'll worry about the sound effects in a little bit, but my voice is being overpowered by the music. So if I just turn the volume down, that turns down through the whole thing. But now we're going to go back to that blue line and yellow line. The yellow line, when I put my cursor over it, it tells me that is volume. Blue line, it tells me that is panning. That is moving the audio between the left and right channel. So we're going to play with that in the music here just so we can hear it quite easily and quickly. So if I click in that line, it adds in keyframes. That's what each one of these little dots are going to be. So currently, I'm going to set it up so the sound, I'll pull it all the way up so it's in the left. Notice it said L100. Now I'll pull this, so now it says R100. And now I'll pull it back up and it'll be left 100, and then I'll click and add another keyframe and I'll bring it back to the middle. Now I'm going to shorten those up a little bit so we don't have to listen quite as long for that change or that effect to occur. So we'll just put it over a few seconds, solo it once more. So left, right, left, center. So we're able to adjust the volume, or I mean the panning. But what we really care about on this, we'll unsolo it. I'm going to pull the voice down to this point where it's back in the center, is I want to keyframe the volume, so I will click and add a keyframe, and now here I'm going to pull it down significantly. We'll pull it down, let's pull it down, say 20 decibels right there. So now even if I move this over, let's see. So now the music got much quieter. We have the crash happening, and if I put the voice here, it's time to... So I can now hear the voice over the top of the music. Record a podcast. I hope you enjoy the show. And now right at that point, I'm going to click on the yellow again, give it a couple keyframes so I can pull it back up. I'll just pull it back up to 0. Probably don't need to go any louder because this music is pretty loud. And if I wanted to punctuate that end of what I said, I could do that with this breaking sound. Show. So as you can see, I've now been able to combine together music, voice, sound effects, adjust the volume, adjust the panning, and adjust what is happening for each clip. Now, this music, as I put it in the timeline, we can see how it goes for a while. Now if I know I don't need my project to be that long, so if I wanted it to be much shorter, I could shorten it down. And now I can control my view. I'm zooming in and out. The little magnifier here zooms it to 100%, and that's how I got to the end of time. I can zoom in bigger or smaller right there. Same way we could fade it in. Now I probably don't need to keep it on that long, but now I can fade out my music as well. So if I wanted to fade the music out, so after the crash it comes back, but then it has a gentle fade out. Now I could manually add keyframes and fade it out, but it's often much faster just to grab the fade in and fade out as part of it. And that allows me to bring my music up, bring it down, pan it, volume, mix, blend. Final step to get our project out of Adobe Audition is to create a mixdown. And we can do that. So if we look under multitrack, we have mixdown or session to a new file, and we would choose entire session. Otherwise, file, export, multitrack mixdown, entire session. So if we choose that, that's going to allow us to take these multiple layers of audio, which in this case is 3, but you could have 10, 20, 30 individual layers of audio that you arrange to create your perfect soundtrack. And we want to save it down into a single file so that we can share it. To do that, file, export, multitrack mixdown, entire session. Now when I choose that, I'm going to choose where I want to put it. And in this case, I'm going to add it to my project folder. And it gives me the name of the file I was working on. It adds an underscore mixdown to the file name, so I know that this is indeed going to be that. And we have options of what format do we want to save it in. So a WAV file is an uncompressed audio file format. So two common forms that we use are WAV and AIFF. And AIFF is the Apple or Mac operating system native audio format. WAV is the Windows operating system native audio format. Both can read either file. WAV is going to be generally more universal across all operating systems, so then you would choose that if you want it uncompressed. So that gives you the highest possible quality. But if you're wanting to sacrifice a little bit of quality for a significant reduction in file size, the format that we then choose is MP3 audio. So MP3 is compressed, so that means data has to be removed to make the file smaller, but it uses advanced algorithms to figure out how to do it in the least perceptible manner, so when you listen to it, hopefully you're not going to notice the difference. All of our source files were waves, but now we are saving it out as a MP3 format, and we'll notice it automatically updated that .mp3. So you never should be typing in. If you type in a file type, that does not make it that file type. You have to always choose it off of a drop down, like here where I can choose it off of my sample type. So if I go back and choose WAV, we see it updated it to WAV up there, but at least my location is still where I want it to go. But I will choose MP3 audio, and then we can look at our options here and decide if we need to or want to change any of those options. Generally, in most cases, you can just leave them alone and you will be in good shape. So I have a name, I have a location, I have verified the format that it is saving in. So you should always do those 3 steps every time you are saving your file. And finally, I will hit OK. It's done thinking. And I look down on the list here and I can see, if I double click, here is my project that we just worked on. So we have to crash, the music fades up, and then the music goes back and forth between the channels, music goes away,
it's time to
we get some voice,
record a pop show.
And then the music got louder again. and then the whole project fades out. So we've completed the cycle. We've recorded sounds, we've imported sounds, we've created a multi-track project, we've mixed them, and finally exported it back down into one single audio file.